New research from the think tank, the Centre for Independent Studies, that I'd encourage you all to read. The paper's called The Rise of Activist Corporations, and it looks at the shift in business from prioritising shareholder value to initiatives that emphasise DEI, diversity, equity and inclusion. Of course, we saw this on steroids last year with The Voice. The paper's been written by Professor Peter Swan, who currently works in the School of Banking and Finance at the University of New South Wales. I'm pleased to say Professor Swan joins me now. Welcome to the program. I've got to ask, when did you start noticing this trend? Great to have your company. I feel a bit like a boiling frog with this because it's been there for some time, but it just seems like the temperature on the stove has gone up. We're noticing it everywhere. So give us a sense of when it started, put it into a broader context about what's happening in similar economies overseas as well, if you can.
Well, I noticed it when most companies in Australia started preaching to the global warming net zero hymn sheet, and then the banks intervened by saying, well, essentially we know that coal and fossil fuel energy is far, far cheaper than any other kind of renewable energy. Nonetheless, we will only fund renewable energy. At that stage, I knew that Australia was going to go from the lowest cost supplier of electricity in the world, one of the lowest, to the status it enjoys today with perhaps the highest cost. So it's been a remarkably bad transformation in recent years. And then I noticed that companies were going along paths which are quite different from what their shareholders would have wanted. For example, Woolworths went ahead with losing $3 billion on its Masters hardware plan to compete with Bunnings. And this, I believe, was because independent directors now dominate the boards of Woolworths and just about every other Australian company. So
let me just jump in there. Professor, let me just jump in there. I want to know why they are doing it, because we know when they went out, Woolworths is a good example, and banned all that Australia Day merchandise, huge backlash. A lot of consumers stayed away. It would have hit their bottom line. It lost them. Brad Banducci, as we know, that their CEO. There's a big insto block, so a block of institutional investors that are the union super funds in these companies. They're pulling the chain of the board directors. I know that. We all know that. But it's not driving value for shareholders. It's driving customers away, and it's upsetting workers. I mean, there's a report not so long ago that workers in these companies are not supporting these DEI initiatives. So how do we get our companies back?
Very hard to get our companies back, but let me say, particularly in relation to The Voice, I think the companies lost their way. They no longer supported the Liberal Party and would no longer support conservative causes. That left them fairly isolated. They believed they could buy insurance. How do they buy insurance? By devoting all their activity in shareholders' funds to supporting the Labor Party and the Greens. So they gave tens of millions of dollars to The Voice to bring about a racist constitution. Qantas put these vote yes stickers on its planes, and we saw this great humbling of corporations bending to the Labor Party, believing that they were protected. Having so one-sidedly supported Labor, they thought they were safe. But of course, this was a very bad strategy.
But they weren't. Labor went after them with the IR.
Of course not. Because once you've buried your friends or your former friends and alienated conservative interests who turn around and start attacking you, Labor and the Greens know that you have no defence. No one will come to your aid, and hence the Greens can propose a new $500 billion a year tax on corporations to eliminate capitalism entirely in Australia. And who's going to fight back against that? Certainly not Labor, and Liberals are put to one side. So they've
So just quickly, I'm going to be out of time. I agree with you there. We're finally seeing them actually going out publicly and speaking against the government, the BCA and others. But so are you saying that this is set in stone and we can't turn this around, that our companies are going to become more and more woke?
No, it's a self-correcting mechanism. The ASX, through its policies, have essentially denied us shareholders control. So we now see that private equity is growing 12 times as fast as public equity, and public equity is largely disappearing around the world. The number of listed companies in the US has halved in recent years. They got larger, but the number has halved. And nearly all the growth in world business is in private equity, because public equity is so discriminated against by regulators in particular. So that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And companies know they've done themselves so much harm through these woke policies, go woke, go broke, that they, I think they've learnt their lesson and will turn around and behave very differently in future.
I hope you're right, Professor Swan. Thank you.